So, um, today we were talking about Leah Thomas, right? So, what
Yep.
did your guys thought? Do you guys know? Actually, do you guys know what's all going on with Leah Thomas? What the situation is with that?
Um, I have a very vague idea, but if you know, enlighten us and the audience, John, on
Okay,
what the
okay.
whole situation going on is.
So I'll put like a lot of detail that some people might have skipped over. So Leah Thomas, she is a college league swimmer. She swam in the 500 freestyle, 100 meter, and the 50-meter dash, swimming dash. Um, she beat out, she beat world records in all three, by a significant number. Before she was in the women's college swim team, she was a part of the men's college swim team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she used to swim. She's been swimming since she was 6 years old, and obviously recently transitioned to being from a male to a female, like the last 2 years, and been taking hormones to do that. So through her hormone, the amount of hormones she had, the amount of estrogen she had, allowed her to move forward into the female swimming track team. And so her last game, which was a qualifying game for like if you're gonna get scholarships or if you're gonna move on to the next level with stuff, she beat out all the women by 40 seconds in the 500 freestyle swim. So I don't know if you guys know much about sports, like in terms of those track record keeping, but normally
Yeah,
it's like a second, half a
right.
second, maybe 2 seconds. She beat them by 40 seconds. So it's fucking road breaking. Not only that,
Absolutely.
she is. This is a college level swimmer. Is competitive to Leslie. I believe she's the female Olympic world record holder for the fastest female swimmer, and she is Leah is only 6 seconds slower than Olympic. I think a 5-year Olympic swimmer. So it's pretty fucking, crazy gap on how she is in the competing. So a lot of parents thought that as being unfair because obviously she has. If you've seen this woman, her fucking chest is or her shoulders is bigger than mine. 6 foot
Yes.
three, bulky ass motherfucker. So a lot of people say there's an unfair advantage to that. So there was a lot of arguments talking about, is it fair to have trans athletes swim or compete in general in women's leagues?
Uh,
What's your guys' thoughts on that?
do, do you want to
Gus,
go
I'll let
first?
you go first. Go ahead,
All
Gus.
right. Me and Wiz were talking about earlier about wrestling, but absolutely not. I don't believe it's fair for any man to join any woman class or brand or anything. Number one, let them. They just for a lot of these women, especially I know in wrestling, they just got their name out there, and as soon as you and now that you're jumping ship, you are doing what a lot of movements have done to the black community. You watered down everything that they did to get to this point, and now put the focus back on you as a man. You put the focus back on you, and now that's a slap in the face to every woman who struggled so hard to get to this point to now have to drop down a couple more notches to let the man lead again. That's number one. Number two, physically, 9 times out of 10, a man is gonna look and be way more dominant than a woman. There's no way that a man should be competing if genetically and physically the woman's body just cannot keep up. That's like if LeBron were to just to join the WNBA. If Roman was to verse, I don't know, Naomi. If they were to have a match, Roman's gonna dominate the match. If LeBron joined the WNBA, he's already dominating the NBA. He's gonna dominate that too. It's an unfair advantage because they can't match up. Now I know most women have the pride of bravado that they could take on and overconquer anything and any man, and I do support those. But at the same time, genetics are genetics. At the end of the day, you can only fight so hard. You can only fight for so long. So once you step for a certain amount of time up against a man, you're going to lose. And I think, again, for every woman that is out there that has worked their way up to that point, I think the woman that I saw that got just beat out because he had earned his spot in that race or that competition was, again, a black woman, a black swimmer who lost her space. And now, for a lot of these college athletes, they start working on this at the age of 7.
Hmm.
So they from the age of 7 to I'll say about maybe 10, 11 years plus, all that work that went to that point is for nothing. Washed down the drain because you couldn't suffice in your own league. Either you get better at your own, or you just don't do it. You just don't do it.
Yeah, yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I happen to actually share a lot of the same feelings as Gus does, as Abiku does about this. I do feel that we're in a space right now where identity has become the forefront. On some level, I'm fully for supporting people who might be one biology gender, but maybe want to identify as another one. That's fine with me. You know, having been in education, seeing children go through that phase, I
I
think
agree.
we could be a little bit different on how we approach the topic and allow children just to be rather than kind of maybe forcing this, but that's neither here or there. Ideally, what I would say about it is unfair. I think once you start talking about sports, specifically where sports depends on your physical acumen, to allow somebody of a different gender to participate in the other gender sport and there be an unfair advantage instantaneously. And I think if that's banned or not allowed to happen, I don't think it's necessarily discriminatory. That's where I think science and data and facts comes into it.
But that's
And
the
I think
problem with that. People are gaslighting that. That if you say that biologically or physically, the physiology of a trans person is still that of a man, people are going to say, well, you're not a biologist. Only a biologist must say something about it. And we're at this
right.
point where even biologists are afraid to speak on this topic because everybody's getting canceled for anything that's against, status quo.
So that needs to be more of the focus, is the agenda that is behind allowing, I think, a lot of this sort of behavior to exist, right?
Yeah.
To the point to where the agenda is canceling out, opposition voices. That to me is more of a danger than anything else. And it just so happens to encompass this particular topic. And what we're seeing now, and this is one of the dangers of doing this, is you're going to begin to see a lot of abnormalities or irregularities like this begin to happen in more and more sports with more and more people. Right now, it is specifically in swimming. I think swimming, by the way, is actually a poetic sport that this would happen in, because swimming is a lot about diameter and how close you are. And in this particular case, you're taking somebody who is a 6'3" or 6'4", and you're lining them up against 5'5" girls. I mean, that's almost a foot difference.
Yeah.
Even if they had just beat them by a couple of seconds, that would have probably been a couple of inches. But, I mean, you can make an argument there. 40 seconds. It just makes it so outright, so overt, that this is not really how things should be from a biological standpoint. And I get what you're saying, John. It's like, well, even the biologists feel threatened to even say that. So really the question that we almost need to be posing is, who actually is going to speak up and advocate for this sort of thing not to happen? Who has the credible background to actually change it? Because that's the problem that we're finding right now. Now it's swimming, but very soon it'll be basketball. It could be softball. It could be a lot of sports that are maybe more specific to women, but you have more trans athletes that have more muscular builds or just natural built-in genetic advantages that give them the unfair advantage basically to win.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unfair.
And
I'm somebody who supports. I support. Trans people want to be whoever they are. Whoever the hell you want to be, you be that, and you be the best damn version of it. But there needs to be a silver line on how far that goes. It's unfair to the other competitors.
I guess the argument that comes in with that is by acknowledging. So let's say we go on the biological aspect. Let's say we do say it biologically you're a man. You have the physical, muscular structure, boneness, all those things as a man, right? So now that destroys the whole concept of you being a woman. See, with the whole language that we're using, and this is where it's really weird. We're trying to redefine what things mean. So people are now. It used to be like gender could be. It was something that's fluid, but sex, that stays what it is. We're not at this point where sex is also fluid. What is a man? What defines a woman, right? We used to say it was having tits and a vagina, right? That's what made us physically different from a man. But now we're at this point where to appease
Us.
huh?
Trying, John.
To appease people, to appease others, we're saying nah, fuck all that shit. I feel like I'm a woman, so thence I take on the sex of a woman. And if you say, again, if you use the argument of saying biological, da da da, you're saying that no, you're not. You're kind of grounding it back in reality. That no, you're still a man. You might see and dress yourself up as one and might try to take hormones to change some of those things. But biologically, you still got this hanging on down with these little two things, you know? You can't change that. Even if you cut it off, you still don't. Huh?
Which are producing testosterone. But, you know, one of the things, and I think this is pretty obvious, but we're not ready for this. We're not ready for this. As a society, we are not ready for this specifically.
Why do you say that?
We are still normalizing trans people in society. And I think we realize that there are some serious culture wars out there about race and about several other things dealing with minorities. We as a society are not ready for this particular issue. And I think this issue could end up getting very nasty.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I do say that for trans people because it makes them an even bigger target than they already are. And now, specifically in athletics. And, you know, I don't really, this is one of those sticky subjects where damned if you do, but damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Now, once again, I will say that the credibility of the person who is advocating against this happening matters. Because there's some people who, you know, maybe religiously or just philosophically disagree with the whole idea and concept of trans people. Mm-hmm. So I do think a big part of it, you know, matters when you do have people who maybe understand the trans person's perspective and their life situation and how they see themselves maybe differently than how they came out of the womb.
Yeah.
But I think a really, really big part of this too is how society chooses to label these people and how that's attributed specifically to sports that already have these two labels, man and woman. And having a subcategory underneath it was never a part of the plan from the inception.
Yeah.
And that's what we have now.
That's an old-fashioned concept now. Like that, those are the questions we have. Believing that.
No, I don't.
I mean, I agree.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I agree with it, but it's like, can there? I guess where we're at in this point is again we're redefining things. The question is there space for more? Is there space for, like he, she, shme, it, or whatever else that you know those other names come by? Like, how do we just and then how do we even act towards something like that? What a transsexual competitor in female sports, do we just say that we only have a game for male transes and then female transes? Because even at that sense, a female transition into a dude still is not going to be able to compete with a dude that transitioned to a female, right? There's still that
right.
So it's like we're playing all these mental gymnastics to try to make something that already, to be very honest, is a form of schizophrenia. Like whenever you have a delusion against what reality states in your psychological mind, where you genuinely believe one thing that's outside of reality, that's the definition of schizophrenia, right? So we're trying to deal with this. We're trying to find space and make accommodations for a disorder, a schizophrenic disorder that really can't even find bounds and ground in logic itself. Does that make?
Well, let's say bipolar, a bipolar disorder. Yeah, you know,
bipolar is emotional, is just emotional instability. Schizophrenia is genuinely, it could be hearing voices, it could be seeing, like believing Elvis is your dad, even though Elvis isn't, but you swear to God Elvis is your dad. It's whenever you believe genuinely in your mind, your psyche, that something is true, even though every aspect of reality states that it's not. If you genuinely believe that you're born in a woman's body, even though let me say that. But that's
so
what I'm telling what the literal definition of schizophrenia is. So with that consistency.
I don't want to dwell on that. I want to go back to the topic.
Okay. Well, I have a question.
That's another show.
What is you all's standpoint on that exactly? Do y'all believe that is a thing?
what people genuinely believe in their gender different.
or just believing that you were born in another.
Yeah,
If that you're, I don't
I think
believe
they
this.
are. I think
I, bel-
it's
I
just like being gay. You can be born
totally
and
believe it.
yeah.
I
I
don't.
totally believe it.
And I believe the whole gay thing is a whole nother point. I mean, though I believe people know what they want young, I don't believe you're born knowing anything. As a child, your part of your innocence is your ignorance. You don't know what you want. You don't know what you like. I believe through what we see or what we experience and what's told to us, we develop a aspiration for it. But I don't believe you're born coming out, oh yeah, I like boys, or yeah, I like girls. Hell, I came out, I didn't know I liked girls when I was 3. I know I like cookies, because cookies were exposed to me. I know I like juice, because juice was
Well,
exposed to me.
But it's like
that
But
something
I
that
that's
didn't,
develop
I
as you
didn't,
get older.
that,
So like,
that's a really, I think Gus brought up a really good point, in the fact that we're talking about, babies essentially when they come out, they know coming out that they're going to be X, Y, and Z, or is that something that through their environmental conditioning that they're taught, or that I was saying earlier is kind of pushed on them. Now, I do personally think that there is a lot of society now, specifically maybe, and may get some flack in the LGBTQ community that are, if the parents are one way, I think there might be kind of an encouragement to push the kids in that direction too. Sometimes just through the conditioning that parental style has, it's maybe overemphasized, and that
but I
places a
ask a
level of.
question. What about like
But
gay people who come from really religious backgrounds, which is really prevalent in extremely Christian and Catholic religions?
but,
well,
Like,
but
see, this
then,
this is where I wasn't done. I guess where I'm going with this is I think there's a deeper meaning to a lot of this stuff that happens, because once again, and maybe this ties into the whole spiritual piece. But what about if people on a much deeper level? Let's talk about maybe on a soul level, if they feel that they're more feminine, or if they feel that they're more of a woman, or that the soul wants to be more of a woman in this incarnation. And of course, we see this play out from a physical eye. So from our physical eye, we can say, well, this person that, and that person this. I mean, there's also people who are empaths, meaning that they're sensitive to energy, and they can look like they have schizophrenia because they don't know how to control their energy. So something that I've learned. So I mean, there's different things that we as humans can't fully understand. We can't conceptualize it because from our mind, which controls everything, but it's still rational based off of what we can see, which is only about 2 to 5%. We make these assumptions about people and about things, and I think what that has done now is it's created this culture of labels, and these labels now indoctrinate and dictate how people are, specifically those in minority communities. And unfortunately, those people who are trans, I think, are getting the brunt of that. Now, granted, there's some things I philosophically can't agree with somebody who's maybe biologically this way and wants to do that. I don't personally, it's hard for me to even talk about it because I like to talk about things where there's a logical solution. I don't know what the logical solution is for that.
so then
Because
let's
I
switch
think,
gears on it. Then let's ask.
yeah,
Instead of logically trying to break down if it's right or wrong, we should. I think we can all say that women. This, like Ku was talking about earlier, this is one of those things. Whenever you see like a minority group getting on with a movement, and then other people jump on to kind of water it down. Women, like, let's be real. Women have fought a lot to get the things that they wanted, right? Back in the
right,
women fought to have their own sports systems back in the 70s, right? Because
right,
otherwise they couldn't compete at all. There was no
right,
competition. Now we have this, and we went full circle, and we have men again coming back and trying to take the rights these women fought for. That's literally like white. Like that's we can even go into like transracialism. What if I see myself as a white man? I don't. I might be black, whatever, but I feel white. I talk white. Shit, I feel like I deserve a 750 credit score. Like I
let's see
want
how
to
well
be.
that goes over with the bank. The bank gonna
You
laugh
know
your ass
what?
right.
If I dress right, tell them my name is John. I work at Coca-Cola. I think I just might get the job. I just might get the loan. But if I say that and I come to people like that, how are they gonna think? And it is pretty much in the same. This in the same retrospect. Do I am I taking up space from people who already fought for such space? I guess is what I'm trying to get at with that. And it's taking
Right.
away
Absolutely.
a lot of the stuff women fought for.
I mean, initially, like
But
yeah, like I said, like it's taking up a lot of that effort because you got to think of, like I mentioned wrestling earlier. For the longest, and Brendan knows this for sure, wrestling in the early 2000s till about, I'll say around 2012, 2013, for the women was nothing but bra and panties matches. Nothing but bra and panties, live sex shows, Playboy, and that's all we perceive women as. I know we mention all the time about how we don't want to objectify women, but for a lot of women in the wrestling industry, that's all they got. If a person like, I don't know, who can I say will be the least talented male wrestler right now, in my opinion? If Austin Theory were to have a sex change and to jump ship to the women's division and dominate, it will be a slap in the face to people like Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Bayley, Lita, Trish, who paved the way for women wrestlers. And the same thing applies to these other sports. Because that's the case. If we were going to do this, why not just merge the sports the whole time?
Mhm.
The reason why that wasn't happening is because physically, most of the women cannot compete. Now, of course, you got the 1 in a million who could probably keep up, but at the same time, probably wouldn't be to the same high level as if it was in just a women's sport. Because hell, a person that me and Brendan knew, India can outball majority of the male athletes at our school, the male basketball players. Not all of them, but a majority of them. So amongst the whole school, yeah, she was up there, but especially for the girls basketball team, she was that guy or that girl.
Mhm.
When you think of women's basketball from McKinley at that time, it was India. When you thought of male basketball, it was Malik. Merge them, of course they're gonna be in the conversation, but of course Malik's gonna dominate 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Shout out to India Malik, and it's also worth noting
Sure.
India was maybe like 5'2" and maybe 100 pounds, so she was a pretty small person too, and she was still dominant.
That plays a piece in it because most women are genetically, physically shorter than all men. Smaller built, smaller frame, shorter. So they have all these disadvantages.
And bone mass.
Yeah.
Right. So they have all these disadvantages and expect to outshine a person who is taller. Like you said earlier, the shoulders of this dude was like gargantuan. So how are they able to compete against this genetic freak?
That's why I said that this is a hard subject to debate, because usually when you debate,
I don't think it's hard. I just think nobody wants to be very open and very blatant about what's going on. So we try to skirt around it so that we're not coming off as aggressive, so not coming off as brash or cruel. But the issue is there is legit facts to state on it, and no matter how we want to skip around it, we gotta state that it's unfair. There's even the female, and that's what I find so crazy. Even the female swimmers in the team who were complaining about how unfair it was, still said that they support her playing in the game. Like, people are just so fucking afraid to stand up and say something. Everybody wants to be agreeable.
I disagree that people are afraid. One of the reasons why I say it's a hard thing to debate is exactly for what you just said. There's a broad swath of the community, of the country, and I think it's more present in our generation, that accepts trans people or supports them. But what they have a problem with, like myself, is whether you can say objectively whether they should be participating in the gender that they identify with sports, despite the obvious advantage, or not. That is a very sticky subject.
You just
because
answered
it's not
the
really
question. You said objectively. Objectively is without having any emotional attachments to it. We just blatantly stated that the physical structure of a trans man is still closely related to that of a man and still far superior than that of a woman. So then there is that's the objective truth. Then objectively, it would be an unfair advantage to put a trans person in a competition against females. Right? That if we're using, that's it. That's the answer. Like,
that's an argument. That's an argument that can be made, but you can also say that it's unfair to discriminate against the person.
That's not objective. We said objective.
I mean, to
that's
who?
Emotional.
It could be objective.
No, that's emotional. objective meaning stating facts, scientific facts, right? If we're being empirical about it, then it's completely unfair. Now, if we want to get emotional and talk
This is
about
why
how
it gets
those are different.
sticky, is my point.
But
Excuse me.
sports isn't about that. Sports is like science. If a person takes, let's talk about uh Bales, right? The issue that ended up happening with her during the Olympic competition is she was taking some medication to help her with her ADHD, right?
Sure.
It was
Bales.
yeah, I can't remember her first name.
The Russian gymnast?
No, the black girl who competed in the
Oh,
yeah,
Simone Biles.
Simone Biles. Thank you. Yes.
Biles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she ended up leaving because she was taking Adderall, which helped her control her ADHD, and it was a drug enhancement, and it was considered an unfair advantage to the other gymnasts. So when they took her off of it, she felt she didn't feel safe about doing her gymnastic stunts, so she dropped out. Right. So if we can say that even taking Adderall is an unfair advantage, and then even when we get into any Olympic sports or any mainstay sports, it's not like they're just playing games. These swimmers weren't just playing to have fun; they were playing to compete. Whenever you're in a competitive level, there are laws and there's regulations, despite how you feel about it, that make sure you're playing on somewhat of an even playing field. You don't take steroids. You don't take anything that's going to give you an upper edge. Now, if you're already genetically at an upper edge, there's your answer right there. It's unfair. It's an unfair advantage, meaning you're not having a fair game, which means you can't compete on a fair level. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, there's also, you could also argue sometimes that there's certain women that are more athletic than men, despite how a man identifies. I mean, yeah, and you know, and I guess what I'm saying is I actually agree. So I agree with that personally, and this is tough, but I agree more with the scientific basis behind this. But I think the argument, whether you want to call it emotional or not, that's being made is that emotions do make a lot of decisions. We are in a state now in the country where emotions can dictate our political system, and a lot of our it's incredibly dangerous. But emotion can get you legislation, can get you policy, can get you in the situation that we're in now. That's why it's still sticky. I mean, we can talk about how the science is there. There's a lot of facts that prove a lot of things out there. But the emotional response, the emotional charge, the emotional attachment really to whatever this societal norm is that's being pushed is so strong or so favored or is so controversial that the opposite decision will still be made in jest of the exact empirical evidence that maybe states the opposition. So that's why I said it's a very sticky situation.
No, I wouldn't even call
we
it
don't have a clear
sticky
solution for this. It's either they can or they can't.
And
what I was thinking
is it
about,
fair to
well, in my
women or
mind,
is it fair to trans players? Because somebody's gonna lose no matter how we do this, right?
Well, then
we look at that.
well,
But there's some women out there that say, "Look, I can still beat a man anyway."
And that
so
man,
they might not.
that's the stickiness of it.
And it's true. Some women can't beat a man. If I was to go up against a track athlete woman, she would win and run circles around me, right? But now, if I was at my top peak and she was at her top peak, again, there are some outliers, but on average, I would dominate her. That's the problem we're talking about. There are some outliers for everything, but on average, a man at his peak versus a woman at her peak, on average, will beat the guy's going to win out. That shows, again, unfairity.
Agreed. But
which means even when we talk about these emotional stickinesses, it's either being unfair to women, which the whole point of all this progress we're making in this country is to be more equal to our women. Now we got men taking up the spotlight, saying golly be damn the women. Like, it's like we're in a society that is diverging away from the progress we were making. We're at this point where we're back to objectifying women. We're demeaning all the things that women fought so hard for, and instead of them complaining about it this time, they're cheering for it and supporting it.
And actually, that's not true. A lot of these women are verbally saying this shit's not right. The issue is, like I was telling you all the other day, I don't feel as bad now because this is what you asked for. This is exactly what you asked for. When we jump to something, not knowing or not thinking about what the consequences could be, this is the end result. that you get. Though it is no, it's not right and not fair, and I do feel sorry to that degree. At the same time, it's like, what else did you really expect to happen? What else did you really expect to happen? It's not like when you switch genders, everything just changes. No, you still have uh the DNA of a man coursing through your body. So if you for so long supported this, pushed this agenda, what other result did you expect to happen? It was only bound to come sooner or later. And I think now what they're realizing is they've bit off more than they could chew. Because now, if anything, they've given themselves an even harder fight down the road. Because now they got to work 10 times harder. They got to be 10 times faster. They got to be 10 times stronger. And I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's gonna be hard. Damn sure hard as hell.
You know what?
Damn so hard.
I support it then. You know what? Forget it. If we're gonna keep going with that, and this is how we want to be as a society, then let's put some fire under women's asses. Let's see how much further we can get women to compete. I mean, maybe that's just a solution. Maybe they want bigger challenges. Maybe we're being too soft on women. Maybe that could also equally be a thing. You know. I don't know.
I believe
that's really our only alternative.
I believe that's a good question and a matter of phrasing. I don't believe we're being too soft. I believe we've allowed them to control way too much of the narrative. The biggest issue I've had is that a lot of what every movement is now is highly dominated and pushed by white women, white young women, white women typically. I saw something the other day. Way back, they canceled Speedy, the show, the old cartoon with Speedy Gonzalez, because they said it was offensive to the Mexican race, only for it to be brought back because the Mexican race loved that show. And it's like they do a lot of things, I think, off the false intention that they're doing us a favor, when in reality, I believe they're just trying to get involved. They just want to feel involved and important to whatever that situation is.
I think we're in a society full of bored people. Like, do you guys watch the Hunger Games?
No.
Okay, so those people were fighting basically because a bunch of rich people that lived in the capital were just bored and wanted some entertainment for the most part in population control. Yeah. We're at this point in the society where we have everything at our fingertips. You want sex, you got porn. You want food, you got Uber Eats. You want products, you got Amazon. Everything comes to us at exact. There is most people, and again, most people who are fighting for this stuff are middle class. They're not like the average Joe doesn't really give that much of a fuck about this stuff, and they're not screaming on Twitter every day complaining about this. A lot of people who are complaining about this are going to be people of some kind of financial stability. They don't have any hardship. They don't have any adversity. So they create something to excite them. I think human beings, we want excitement. That's why our media cycles are always so tantalizing. It's just so we can feel like, oh, the world's ending. Oh, I need to rile up and be mad because we're just bored.
Or in fear.
Or in fear. And I think from our own boredom, it seems like it's being our own demise, because what we're not realizing is, despite us arguing about if a man or if a woman that transitions and all that stuff should be fair, we have places like China that's taking over economically. You got places in China that that they're educating their students around all things that are necessary, STEM and all that. Our kids are still behind in education. Most people are still in poverty. Like, we're behind in all this shit, and we're spending so much time arguing on these superficial social issues, where socially most of the people are way below. Like, the average person on our age range in Gen Z will not have housing, cannot afford housing. Very few people can afford housing right now. Sure. And those who do are very lucky. Sure. Anybody been on the market can vouch for that. So we're in this society where I'm 24. We're all 24, right? Normally, 20, 30 years ago, we'd be getting a house. We'd probably be getting married, or at least have a car, a house, and work at something that got us. We're completely independent and starting our own family. I can't afford that. I own a business, and I still can't afford to buy a fucking house and live the American dream. We're at this point that the price to
live.
The price to live is just so high, and yet we're still focusing on these superficial things because our reality isn't here anymore. We are distracted in this, right? This is where our life is, and that's why we're
Yeah.
focusing so much on these issues. Because I said objectively, if this happened 10 years ago, people logically would have said, "What the fuck?" Like, I ought to make it very clear. I don't in any way think transsexual people don't have a right to exist. They have a right to exist and experience life just as anybody else. But we need to be realistic in the things we go at. Like, come on now. Like, we're at this point we're gaslighting reality because we're just bored and we're not focusing on the real things we need to focus on.
I can agree with that.
That's always been the case. It's just worse now.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And I think it's because as things get worse, we're gonna try to seclude ourselves more into this, so we don't have
The
to
metaverse.
realize that. Yeah, and then the metaverse is the next transition. The world could be on
Yep.
fire, but as long as I'm playing No Man's Sky and I'm traveling to different planets, I don't have to worry. I'm fed.
Which is what a lot of people actually advocate for. One of the reasons is we're so focused on other people besides ourselves that we're so caught up in that we'll let our lives go to shit because we're more worried about the war over in Ukraine right now. So it's true.
Yeah.
I don't want to say worry about yourself, but practice more self-love so that you put yourself first. It doesn't have to be in a selfish or braggadocious way, but put yourself first. Love yourself.
Yeah,
Ooh, damn. Should we end right there?
I think we should. I think love is the key, and yeah. Let's move forward. We need to move forward as a better society, and I think in doing such means we need to get out of our emotions. We need to see things objectively, and then we should just love each other compassionately.
Yeah.
I think doing that would solve a lot of our issues.
I agree.
Any other things you guys want to talk about? Any other thing we missed?
I think we did a really good job for that topic. I thought it was, I'm always going to pose devil's advocate, but I thought it was a really good take. 3 different takes, all 3 unique, and I think ultimately we can put this question maybe even out to the audience.
What do you guys think? Do you guys think we should allow transgenders to compete in female Olympics or even male competitive sports? Do you guys think?
And if you don't,
why?
Sorry.
If you don't, why?
If you don't, why? And what's your solution?
Do you think we need to change these issues to be a more loving society or not? Put your thoughts in the comments. We'll hit you guys later.